I'm Kevin Kane. For 3 decades, they called me by code names: Wraith, Echo, sometimes just Number 4. In public records, I didn't exist. In family photos, I was a ghost. Now I'm 68, retired, and the only thing heavier than my service pistol ever was is the weight of what I can no longer keep silent. I joined the agency in the early 1980s. Back then, the Cold War wasn't just maps and speeches. It was an invisible storm. We trained for operations the newspapers would never print and our parents could never know about. The official story was that we were counterintelligence officers, tracking enemy spies. The unofficial reality was stranger. We were being groomed for unacknowledged projects, the kind that had no funding line in any budget and no acronym in any directory. The first time I realized something was different was at Camp Marrow, a windswept compound hidden in the New Mexico desert. Officially, it didn't exist. To get there, you took a bus with blacked-out windows from an airstrip that had no name on any chart. They confiscated our watches, our pens, even our belt buckles. "No personal items," the sergeant barked. "From now on, you belong to the program." Days blurred into weeks. We ran obstacle courses under blazing suns, memorized ciphers until our eyes bled, learned how to disappear into crowds and how to interrogate a man without leaving marks. At night, though, a different curriculum began. We were led, blindfolded, into underground classrooms where instructors from other agencies gave lectures about technologies I'd never heard of: exotic propulsion, directed energy, non-conventional biological intelligence. We were told it was all theoretical, just threat modeling. Even then, I suspected it was more. One night in late '84, we were woken at 0200. "Field exercise," said the duty officer. "Dress for desert conditions." We boarded unmarked trucks and drove for hours. No one spoke. When the tailgate dropped, a cold wind sliced through the sand. The stars above were bright as surgical lamps. Out on the plain, a row of Quonset huts squatted like sleeping animals. Beyond them, a perimeter fence topped with sensors glimmered under the moon. They led us into a hangar that smelled of ozone and oil. Inside was something under a tarpaulin the size of a tennis court. Only its outline was visible. Sharp angles, no wings. "Advanced aircraft," one of the instructors said. "Do not touch, do not speak." We formed a perimeter and waited. At 03:45 it happened. A soundless flash lit the desert as if a second moon had risen. We ran outside. Above the fence hovered a shape I couldn't process at first. A luminous oval, rotating slowly, casting no shadow. It wasn't like the black projects we'd been shown. It wasn't like anything. It slid across the sky, stopped dead, then shot upward without acceleration blur, vanishing into a pinprick of light. "Inside," an officer shouted. We were herded back into the hangar. "You saw nothing," he said. "You will sign NDAs tonight. Any deviation will be treated as treason." His voice shook slightly. Even he didn't believe his own script. Back in the barracks, no one spoke. We all had the same expression, a mixture of awe and fear, like children who'd glimpsed a monster under the bed and realized the adults couldn't protect them. For months afterwards, bits of the program bled into our training. We were given orientation modules about psychological resilience, memory compartmentalization, and controlled perception. We were told to practice selective recall, essentially training ourselves to forget on command. I still have holes in my memories from those days, like Swiss cheese. Sometimes a smell, scorched metal, or the faint sweetness of desert rain will bring a flashback, then vanish like a dream. One exercise burned into my mind took place in a sealed facility under a mountain. We were led past blast doors into a chamber lined with mirrors. In the center stood a metal sphere, humming softly. An instructor whispered, "Observe, do not engage." The sphere pulsed with light. In its reflection, I thought I saw something else. Tall, thin silhouettes like afterimages, moving just out of sync with us. When I blinked, they were gone. Later in the mess hall, my teammate Lopez whispered, "They're not training us to fight Russians. They're training us to deal with something else." He never elaborated. 2 weeks later, he was reassigned. I never saw him again. By 1986, I was deployed overseas on deniable missions. Officially, I was a cultural attaché. Unofficially, I tracked shipments, people, rumors. In abandoned airfields and shuttered labs, I saw equipment labeled with code names I still can't say out loud. I sent reports into a void. Sometimes packages came back, sealed envelopes with instructions to burn after reading. Inside, photographs of shapes in the sky, biological samples, fragments of alloys. I began to keep my own notes, coded in a private cipher. I knew it was dangerous, but I couldn't let it all dissolve into the black hole of classified archives. Those notes are what I'm using now to tell you this story. The moment that changed everything happened in 1991 on a remote island in the Pacific. We'd been dispatched to observe an anomalous recovery operation. That's all the brief said. When we arrived, the anomaly was already under a tarp with guarded Marines who wouldn't meet our eyes. That night in a makeshift command post, I heard a sound outside, a low, thrumming hum. I stepped out. Over the tree line, a sphere of light hovered silently. Inside it, just for a second, I thought I saw a figure looking back at me. Not human, but aware. A flash, and it was gone. My earpiece crackled, "Agent Kane, inside now." They debriefed me for 6 hours under bright lights. Describe what you saw. Every time I answered, they wrote nothing down. After that, the assignments changed. Fewer field ops, more containment missions. We were told to intercept leaks, neutralize evidence, steer narratives. In a way, I became a ghost, not just in records, but in reality, erasing traces of events that official history wasn't ready to accept. Sometimes I wonder if by erasing those traces, I erased pieces of myself. 30 years later, sitting in my small house by the sea, I can still hear the desert wind, the hum of the sphere, the silence of men who had seen too much. That's why I'm speaking now. Not to sensationalize, but to bear witness. If you're listening, know this: the world is stranger than you've been told, and some secrets don't stay buried forever.
I'm Kevin Kane. For 3 decades, they called me by code names: Wraith, Echo, Number 4. In public records, I didn't exist. In family photos, I was a ghost. Now I'm 68, retired, and the only thing heavier than my service pistol ever was is the weight of what I can no longer keep silent. You already know about the desert, the tarpaulin and the hangar, the humming sphere and the Pacific Island. Those weren't episodes. They were threads in a single pattern. Tonight I'll try to lay that pattern out before it fades from my memory for good. After the island in 1991, I wasn't sent back into the field. Officially, I was promoted to strategic liaison. In reality, I was moved underground, literally. My new workplace had no windows and no name. It was a library of sealed drawers and cryogenic vaults, a museum of things the public was never meant to see. Inside were alloys that bent light strangely, biological specimens that didn't fit any genome, and handwritten notes from the 1940s with sketches of craft like the one I had seen. Our job was not to study, only to catalog and contain. We don't interpret, our supervisor said, we store. But storage leaks. The smells, the faces, the sounds from the sphere, they came back in dreams. The agency taught me to forget, but not how to live with holes in my mind. I began keeping my own notes again, coded in a cipher only I knew. I told myself it was just for clarity. In truth, it was for survival, a breadcrumb trail back to myself. From 1992 to 2005, I shifted from handler to cleaner. We didn't only intercept leaks, we manufactured confusion. We seeded forums, fed skeptics and believers alike, built a hall of mirrors so elaborate even insiders couldn't tell truth from fiction. The world thinks UFO stories are noise. We made them that way. Meanwhile, the vault grew. I saw colleagues disappear, reassigned, burned out, suicided, or something worse. Lopez, who whispered, "They're training us to deal with something else," never returned from his reassignment. I never even saw a memo, just a blank space where a man used to be. By 2007, I was done. I asked to retire, they denied it. I went through the motions, a ghost with a badge. Then in 2011, something happened that finally broke me. We were monitoring a remote research station in the Arctic after an anomalous event. At 03:17 a.m., a luminous sphere rose out of the ice, silent, the size of a house, glowing like a frozen sun. For a heartbeat, I felt it looking at me. Not scanning, not threatening, just looking. Then it shot upward and was gone. My supervisor muttered, "Another one," and went back to his paperwork. I realized then we weren't protecting humanity from a threat. We were protecting a narrative from reality. I started copying my hidden notes to microcassettes, scattering them in safe deposit boxes under false names. I knew the watchers would come eventually. They always do. But by then, I wanted something left behind that wasn't an empty file and a forgotten code name. Last winter, I opened one of those boxes. Inside was a fragment of alloy sealed in resin, photos, and a note in my own handwriting for when the noise becomes unbearable. I took it home. For weeks I stared at it, hearing the hum of the sphere in my skull. Outside, a black SUV sometimes parked at the end of my street. Maybe paranoia, maybe them. Either way, the clock was running out. And so, I started recording. Not for sensationalism, but to bear witness, to tell the story whole, even if it costs me. After this, whatever happens to me doesn't matter. If you're listening, it means at least part of the vault has leaked. Here's what you need to understand. Black Vault was never a single facility. It was a funnel, a method. Capture anomalies, strip them of context, bury them under layers of plausible deniability, and feed the public both truth and fiction until they can't tell truth from fiction. We were trained not to decide whether these things were alien, interdimensional, experimental, or something older that had always been here. Our job was simply to manage belief until someone higher gave other orders. No one ever did. I had choices. I chose the shadows, the code names, the black budgets. I told myself it was for security, for stability, for humanity. But the line between protector and jailer blurred until I couldn't see it anymore. Sometimes, late at night, I wonder if Lopez chose differently. Maybe he refused. Maybe that's why he vanished. Tonight, the tapes and notes sit on my table like a jury waiting for a verdict. Outside, the SUV's headlights flare and die. Maybe they're coming, maybe they're just memories. Either way, it's time. I've mailed fragments to multiple addresses, hidden keys in plain sight, embedded truths in noise the way we used to hide lies. When you hear this, part of the vault will already be leaking. I don't know if it will change anything. Maybe it will only add another mirror to the hall, but at least it will be a mirror I chose. The last image I want to leave you with is not of craft or labs or vaults. It's of the desert at 3:45 a.m., stars bright as surgical lamps, and in luminous oval hovering over the fence. For a heartbeat, I felt not fear, but recognition, like a child glimpsing something he'd known before birth. Then it shot upward and was gone. 30 years later, sitting in my small house by the sea, I can still hear the desert wind, the hum of the sphere, the silence of men who had seen too much. That's why I'm speaking now. Not to sensationalize, but to bear witness. If you're listening, know this: the world is stranger than you've been told. And some secrets don't stay buried forever.